serious. People who were friends or knew someone who turned out to be a cold-blooded killer. How did you react when you found out? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A kid I grew up with murdered his entire family, aside from his older brother who had already moved out. He had been caught filming his sister showering and then killed his mother, father, little brother, and the sister he was filming. I'm from a small town, so it shook the community pretty heavily. He was a nice kid, so it left us all dumbfounded. The surviving brother still visits him in prison to this day. Sad story all the way around. I went to high school with a guy who killed his girlfriend's son. I guess the kid was too slow going up the stairs and he punched him and kicked him. The boy died from internal bleeding in the night. I went to high school with a guy who beat his girlfriend with a pipe and then beat or stomped her new puppy to death. The girl from our high school as well. It was crazy. The girl survived and ended up going to the police to report him. After he was arrested though, she started posting all over Facebook about how she couldn't wait for him to be released and she couldn't wait to marry him. I couldn't believe it. I went to college with a guy who was friendly and funny when he was sober, always polite and easy to converse with on most any topic, well liked by guys and fancied by many girls. When he was drunk, different story. He would get this dead behind the eyes look and seek out fights, not stupid barroom brawls, but extremely violent encounters where he would get people on the ground and try to stomp their head in. My friends and I avoided him. He tried starting fights with many of us and we all said that he was going to kill someone someday. Well, that happened in 2007 when he took a girl back to his apartment after a baseball game. She apparently didn't do what he wanted and he beat, choked, and stabbed her. I was shocked when I heard, but not surprised if that makes sense. He's currently in jail, serving a 35-year sentence. Good. I did drugs a couple times a long time ago with a guy. He had a roommate. The guy decapitated the roommate with a saw while he was still alive because he thought the roommate was sleeping with his wife. The kicker? The roommate and the wife were siblings. They only ever found the head. I worked with a guy that killed his family. He moved to our state from a state pretty far away. He seemed to be a nice guy. I sat next to him for well over a year. He had pictures of his kids at his desk and would talk your ear off about many subjects, but would get weird and vague if you asked about his family. One day, he just doesn't come into work. He never returned. Boss and coworkers have no idea where he went. He left all of his personal belongings at work. Then we see on the news that he was arrested for murder. He had several kids with his ex-wife, and she was looking to get child support out of him. He had remarried and didn't want to pay, so he killed her and his kids that he had with her and fled the state. He had managed to avoid the law for that year, but then stupidly decided to try to get a new license in our state with his real name. He was found pretty quickly after that. When I was in culinary school, I worked with a future psycho in a restaurant. We were both servers. We became good friends and hung out after work all the time. After I graduated, I got a job cooking in a very nice restaurant, and I got him a job there because he was an excellent server. I eventually left that job and we drifted apart. Fast forward 15 years. His name randomly pops into my head, and I wonder, whatever happened to him? I Google his name. First search result was a news headline. He was about to get a life sentence for murder of one of his kids and attempted murder of his other kid and his wife. Turns out he had moved to middle of nowhere, Indiana, and got heavy into meth. When I knew him, he was a nice, normal, hardworking guy. Very sad. My mom lived next door to a guy who ended up killing a little girl and hiding her under his floorboards. She said that as a kid, he was always a creepy guy, and he would do and say odd things, though that she wasn't that surprised to hear that he was arrested for murder. My grandparents lived next door to his dad for many years after his son was charged and jailed for the crime, and they always felt bad for him. But the family was quite poor, and, for lack of a better phrase, they were dragged up rather than brought up. The murder was of a 9-year-old girl who had gone missing, and the whole region was searching for her. He apparently knew the family. He'd taken the girl, sexually assaulted her, and ended up killing her, panicked, and hid her body under the floorboards. The girl was from a rough family too, and social services ended up involved with her mother, who had several kids. My mom always felt uncomfortable around her neighbor. She was friends with her sister too, and the kids on her street used to hang together a lot, but he was always the outsider. The most annoying thing is, he only got 23 years for the murder. and he's due for parole in 2023. I actually sort of have a story for this. The speech therapist, ST, I used to see as a child turned out to be the prime suspect in a murder case. Nothing has been proven, but all evidence points to him. I was seeing him in 2004, and apparently this took place in 2001 or 2002, if I recall correctly. His ex-girlfriend broke up with him and was seeing another guy, AG. ST, being the jealous type, kept tabs on their relationship and often followed them out to places to abuse them. AG was also a creature of routine, so ST had his schedule under control too. E.g., AG would take the bins out and go for a walk with a specific time every Tuesday night. One Tuesday night, ST turns up, stabs him repeatedly, then runs him over in AG's car, I guess to leave the body in a state so that it looked like an accident as opposed to a stabbing. When I found out, I wasn't really surprised. He always seemed a little off and would do strange things like make dinner reservations during our sessions. He definitely had an aggressive side, which was a bit scary for 7-year-old me. I just can't believe the guy was dealing with young kids like that. Just makes me really uneasy. I work at a gas station. I used to work at a location by a bunch of hotels, and I worked mornings Monday through Friday, so I had plenty of regulars who pretty much felt like friends. There were 2 maintenance guys from one of the hotels nearby that would come in every day for drinks. One of them, my favorite of the 2, was Hispanic, and he helped me practice my Spanish when he came in. So he was nice and fun to be around, and it always brightened my day when he came in. One day, I was looking at Facebook and I saw a news article that there was an incident at the hotel he worked at. Someone had committed suicide by cop when he busted out of a hotel room closet with a gun because he was running after shooting his wife and her best friend because he found out she was cheating. Broke my effing heart. It literally felt like I had lost a loved one, and I was so torn about how to feel because I missed him and was sad that he was gone, but I was never sure that was okay to feel because he was a murderer. The other maintenance guy stopped coming in after that. I think he quit his job at the hotel. I tried messaging him on Facebook to see how he was holding up, but I never got a response. It's probably really unlikely, but if you're reading this, I miss you, Pablo. I do too. I hope you're doing okay. I actually have 2 stories for this one. My mother works as a records clerk for the sheriff's department where she lives. Next door to her office is the county jail where inmates either awaiting trial or on short sentences for non-violent crimes sit. Every couple days, a group of inmates with a proven record of good behavior come to mom's office to do janitorial work. Most of them are guys in for back child support. For the entirety of my childhood, I knew one of those inmates. He was the nicest guy. Got along with the staff, the officers. It was easy to forget he was an inmate. Turns out, it's because he was a former cop. Came home one night and caught his wife in bed with another guy. Took them outside, shot them, and turned himself in. I couldn't believe it the first time I'd heard the story. Nicest guy I'd ever met killed 2 people. Still not sure why they let him stay at the jail instead of sending him to prison somewhere, but there he stayed, and he worked every day till they released him. Second story is less involved. My first day of basic training, we were sitting in reception and the drill sergeant asks us if there are any legal issues that would prevent us from completing training. One of the guys who rode the bus down to Fort Jackson with me sticks his hand up. Yeah, there's 2 dead bodies in the trunk of my car at home. TS takes down his info and leaves to make a call. Hour or so later, 2 MPs show up, throw the guy in cuffs, and walk him away. Never saw him again. My brother was friends with someone who falls in this category. We'll call him V. Nothing ever stood out of the ordinary with V, just a normal, charismatic guy. One night, my brother was at a party with his friends drinking. It was late at night, like around midnight. He received a call from V. He was asking my brother for a ride somewhere. My brother was drunk, so he said he couldn't do it. The next day, we heard the bad news. V had brutally beaten his mother with an iron pipe and tried to make a run for it. It wasn't long until he was found and arrested for murder. We still have no idea why he did it either. If my brother had not drunk that night, he could have been involved in something he had no idea about. Guy we all classmates grew up with since kindergarten got into an argument in front of a mutual friend's house one night. Mutual friend's older brother, also our friend, he was a year older, goes outside to break up the fight since it was literally on his front lawn. Guy pulls out a gun, shoots blindly into the group in the pushing and shoving, hits older brother in the neck, He bled to death, gasping and choking on his own blood in the yard we played in since we were 5, in front of his mom and little brother and us. Guy's almost out of prison, and I doubt he lives longer than a year on the outside. Just going to start the cycle again, though. I went to school with someone who later in his life had a man killed because he wanted to hook up with the man's wife. He paid some lowlifes $10K, who then went to the man's house, dragged him outside, tied him up, and slit his throat in front of the wife. Then he played shoulder to cry on for the wife, and they actually hooked up a couple of months later. He only got caught because he stupidly boasted about it in a pub. The police suspected that wifey was in on it too, but they could never prove it. When I heard it on the news, I was shocked, but also not really surprised. Something was always a bit off about him. He wasn't too bright, had a mean streak, and was spoiled rotten. It's crazy to me I actually have an answer for this. A family member dated and almost married a girl that killed a man with her ex. She did this previously, before meeting my family. I didn't know this bit of information until months of knowing her. Before I knew this, she stayed with me frequently and legitimately seemed very nice. I couldn't process it. I felt sick. I ended up Googling her and found out the whole story, which was way worse than I could have imagined. I cried and felt insane. It made me feel gross. She helped us decorate Christmas trees, and then days later I found out. I don't know how to describe the feeling, it's just weird. I went to school with a chick who ended up raping, beating, and killing an 8-year-old girl. Then she stuffed the child's body in a suitcase and dumped it near water. It wasn't something I would have expected from her when I knew her. She was always so friendly and nice. One of my best friends even dated her at one point, and he even just as shocked as I was when he saw her in the news. Anyway, she's a piece of shit now. I'd kill her if I was allowed to. There was a gang in my city where to become a full member you had to shoot someone from a rival gang. Shoot, not necessarily kill. Anyway, a kid who I went to school with was always trying to be the cool hard man and often got called out on his bullshit. So, in the last year of school, he joined this gang and ended up killing 2 people and fleeing the country. Now, this took place in the UK, where gun crime isn't unheard of, but rather a lot less common, so it ended up being on Crime Watch. Last I heard, he's still on the run. This is going to sound messed up, but I know at least 2 unrelated murderers. One was a school shooter at my college, and the other was a woman who was in charge of a community garden I was a part of. I'm 46 years old and have a pretty vanilla life. I wonder if, by a certain age, there's just a probability of one knowing a murderer, kind of like having 2 friends with the same birthday. Anyway, I was horribly dismayed at the school shooter. It made my college feel unsafe. Plus, I knew the 2 people he killed, so I was also terribly saddened. The community garden organizer killed her step-grandson, who was 2. I felt more shock and repulsion at that. My dad was good friends with a guy who killed his wife to collect life insurance and get out of debts. He's currently serving something like 40 years. My dad was shocked. The guy was at church every Sunday and gave no signs of being a complete psychopath. I guess my dad found out when it made the local news.